I'm going to be breaking the slate down. We just got news that Seth Curry is out, which I sort of figured was going to happen, but we're going to have to adjust accordingly. I already thought he'd be limited at best tonight, so the fact that he's out, we will adjust to. And give everybody a minute to pop on in. I'm going to be here until 6 Eastern, and that's about it. I want to see how the numbers reproject for that, but my natural feeling is to try to stay away from the Philadelphia somewhat side of this. Like, I mean, I put one of my favorite bets of the day is Milwaukee to cover. I really like that bet, and the spread is already changing, but I still love that bet, and I think it's a really, really. I have a very hard time seeing Philadelphia stay in this game unless somebody just goes berserk like a Shake Milton or a Tyrese Maxey. Milton would be my best guess, and that is what I'm going to be betting on. But it is definitely a weird situation, and we want to try to figure out what the projections say before we get too heavily involved. So why don't you guys pop on in any questions, pop on in any thoughts. Please like and subscribe and do all that stuff. We want to keep this stuff going. We've had some pretty good takes, I think, over the last few days, and some are going to miss. But I mean, even the initial lineups I made, I know I didn't play on DK yesterday. I've got it working again, which is nice. But would have been really nice to leave them in because I had a lot of the LaMelo with Westbrook, Davis, or the Curry with Westbrook, Davis, which I didn't have Curry, Westbrook. I had Curry, Davis. Who was the other one I had in that lineup? Curry, Davis, LaMelo. There was a lot of good stuff out there. So I obviously had my initial builds up, but I was going to play Paul Reed, and then Paul Reed became out of the question. I think he's going to be much more in play tonight. Anyway, I'll keep talking about what I'm doing, but it's going to be hard because I've already got to make an adjustment on basically every lineup that I've created, even though I had basically no Curry as it was. Ask FanDuel, ask DraftKings, ask 1v1, 2v2, 5v5. I don't care. Happy to answer everything for you guys. And yeah, thanks for being a part of True DFS. And again, like and subscribe. So let's get into it. Clippers cheap guards. Who do you like most out of Luke, Eric, or Terrence Mann? So I guess he's not a guard, but my favorite of the guys is Batum. But I actually think that Mann makes the most sense. He'll be the most popular, and Luke would be my next favorite, followed by Eric Bledsoe. Any thought on the Atlanta game time decisions? Yeah, I think some of those guys aren't going to play. I think it's almost no question that that some guys aren't going to play. And if they do play, I think they'll be limited. So that's where I'm at on the Atlanta game. This game on these kind of slates it's by time. The problem is you have all the chalk and most of it pretty good chalk from the first game. It's going to change a little bit, and very shortly, we just need to get updated projections on that Clipper situation. I hate that it happens right when we come on air, like an hour before, especially because it's supposed to be like an hour and a half or 2 hours that we should be getting that stuff, and we're getting it a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting in the Atlanta side. I don't really love that game in general. One of my takes today was the under in that game. I stand by that. Unless somebody again gets crazy out, but the Atlanta stuff is I can't speak to how you should speculate with players. Just play players in the later games, and you can have adjustable plays. I mean, with Bogdanovich and Hunter questionable, Cam Reddish could become a very strong play. Kevin Huerter would become somewhat viable. You could argue for Gallinari potentially, although I don't like. I mean, Gallinari in back-to-backs historically is not a guy I would ever touch. And so it's tough. They've also got Lou Williams out there, who maybe a strong play if both those guys are out. I also think, again, you're talking about some potential blowout run. Not necessarily guaranteed, but that's where that one stands. I'm going to wait to see how they break down the offensive. It's funny that like I hate Danny Green as a play in general without the other guys. It's just you're just playing a guy like it's like a KCP play. You can just always sort of get there, but it's not like he's getting a big benefit or boost from Embiid being out. And I think Paul Reed is going to become the guy who I feel like is going to become more popular, unfortunately for me, because I really wanted to play him anyway. I thought he was going to get some run tonight. And I think Shake Milton will as well become fairly popular, where I think he was going to be lower on in the teens range. I think he'll be much higher. So I'm going to turn my air conditioning on because it's hot as hell in my room right now. And I am then going to finish up with what we've got so far. So yeah, remember just with those Atlanta situations, just try to make sure, any of those pivots make some sense. I mean, you might get great value in that game. The problem is this first game is it's going to be hard to ignore, even if there is a blowout for Milwaukee, which is, anything 10 or above tonight. Obviously I'm going to win that bet with Milwaukee because they're when I bet it, it was I think it was a 6-point favorite. Now they're up to 7.5. It's going to keep climbing. So I don't have the updated projections on Curry yet. The initial thing this is going to mean is, like I said, Shake, Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, potentially Yang could have a little bit of a bigger role. Tyrese Maxey, I think, is going to be a natural thing people do. I'm a little concerned about him with playing 40 minutes last night at a higher price tag. So I may be a little bit under that because I think that's the natural thing guys are going to go ahead and do. And I am personally trying to find ways to fade Drummond, and I think it's very doable on DraftKings especially. So I have Drummond at like, what do I have him, 15% on DraftKings, and I probably am not going to change that. So unfortunately, with Curry being out, it does sort of make Drummond more the focal point of the offense. I mean, Curry's actually done a pretty good job, being a secondary creator for that team this season. So it is going to affect some things. There's other guys who are showing up as really popular that you can have it. Like, I'll have a tiny bit of exposure, but 30% owned Grayson Allen. Everybody else can have it. The guy gets red hot, shoots 9 of 17 over his last 2 games from 3. Also had 4 steals in the last game. And at 32 and 38 those games. Basically has not been above 30 the rest of the season, and that included time without Drew Holiday. So with Drew there, I love Drew as a play tonight. I don't think there's anything groundbreaking there. I think everybody does. But my priority plays in the first game, which is what we should be focusing on right now, are Giannis, but again, may have an excuse to get under the field. And Bobby Portis, as much as I love Bobby Portis, it feels very, very, very strange to play him at this ultra chalk at a pretty high price tag for him. So I do have him in my main lineup on FanDuel currently. I wanted to get some exposure, but I definitely want to be below the field on him. So that's something I'm going to have to try to work out, because I just think that there's so many bus paths for the Milwaukee guys. Milwaukee has like a million bodies. Rodney Hood could play minutes. Ojale can play minutes. Nwora can play minutes. Connaughton will play minutes. Thanasis will play minutes potentially, depending on, they can just go really deep. And I think, like I said, I think they can control this game. It still means I still like Milton, Canard, Bronco. I already said that. Milton's going to become really popular now, unfortunately. We had him, we had I think the right idea on the Milton play when we thought Curry was going to be in. Now the problem is almost like, can you fade him with Curry out? Because he actually is going to end up starting to project really well, and he's going to end up being really popular. Less so if he's coming off the bench, which I think is what they'll do. It doesn't make a lot of sense to play he and Maxey together to start. It makes more sense to play Paul Reed as the other forward, because they need size and length to match up with Giannis and Portis, and Drummond alone can't really match up exactly with either of those guys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. They brought up Aaron Henry and Charles Bassey. Not brought him up, but Jaden Springer. I think Springer and Henry will get some minutes, but not anything that's going to be viable enough probably to use. You might even see one of those guys starting, by the way. I don't think so, but it's possible. And they could put Draymond. I guess they could put Danny Green, who's tall enough probably to guard Portis, but Portis will just beat him up down low. I don't know. It's a really weird first game. I'm waiting for the projections to update right now. So keep firing your own thoughts, your own questions. I really like Paul George as a pivot off of Giannis tonight. I think that, he's going to have some ownership, but you're talking about maybe 1/3 the ownership. He's also got a cheaper price tag. Like I said, Giannis may end up at 60. They like to get, the problem with Giannis is even when they're up by a bunch, they tend to like to give him they really want him to play like less than, even in a blowout, like 28 minutes. And you can look at it all year long, other than the one game where they got smoked and he was terrible against Miami. If they're blowing someone out, they usually like him to get like a normal sort of run, like, 28-ish minutes. So 28 minutes of Giannis is great, but is it great at 1,000,000% ownership where you might get 37, 38 from Paul George in maybe the best matchup you could possibly ask for against Portland? So that's where I stand on that sort of play. I still haven't finished my builds. I'm not going to be able to until I get updated projections, and sites are a little slow on updating this projection right now because they don't know what to do without an announced starting lineup, and we just have to roll with it. So I'm going to try to see what I can get for you guys and see if I can improve anything that maybe comes up. Because right now I've still got they're still like just not accounting for Curry's minutes, even where you do have sites that do have some things with him. It's really, really weird. Anyway, I love Milton. Korkmaz is going to be a tough fade, especially on DraftKings. That's the first game. My interest is mostly Holiday. I like Giannis, but I'm going to try to be under the field on him. Korkmaz and Milton are the two Sixers that I like a lot, along with Paul Reed, who I think gets to see some run tonight in this particular matchup. So maybe it seems speculative, maybe you're reaching for value, but that's what I'm doing. George Hill getting a ton of ownership. I mean, we just talked about all these bodies in Milwaukee. I'll just go ahead and say, like, I have George Hill will be in a couple of like filler spots in game stacks. I have no interest in playing George Hill. It just feels fishy. Like, we've had no Drew Holiday, and in all those games without Drew Holiday, this guy never eclipsed 23 fantasy points. Now, that, obviously, you can say, hey, 3,600, we take 23 fantasy points. Sure, why not? But you're going to play a really chalky George Hill, again, in a game that I think that it could end up as a blowout where they have tons of guards, tons of weapons. He's projected to play 30 minutes. I think there's a very good chance he plays 24 minutes, maybe less. So I will take my shots with a Paul Reed play instead and get the lower ownership there. I do think Nurkic is – see, I like that question, Sharks. I think Nurkic is like a really good sleeper play tonight. And I mean, look, this guy has not been the best of himself this season. He gave us every reason to play him in the last game where he put up 40, what did he put up, 42 fantasy points in 22 minutes? He had, 17 rebounds in 21 minutes. He had 17 rebounds. How could I not have some interest in him? He has a ceiling. He definitely has a floor. He can kill you. He can kill your lineups, but I really do like him. Initially in the day, it was looking like he was going to be even lower owned, like in the 3 or 4% range. I knew that wasn't going to happen. He's going to end up somewhere between 10 and 15%, I think, depending on what other news we get. So it's going to be weird. So hopefully while these update, you guys can bear with me. I'm going to be out of here in probably 15 minutes so I can finish my builds. I still have Drew on my FanDuel. That's the one place I played Curry was FanDuel, and I haven't even edited out this yet because I want to try and figure out what I want to do with that position. But the natural thing is Korkmaz. And it's open. It's almost like now they want me to play George Hill, and I'm just not going to do it. I don't. If George Hill gets hot and makes 6 of 6 threes, great. Congratulations, George Hill. You beat me with 6 threes, and you made all your threes or whatever. There's really so little. I would rather play Pat Connaughton than I would George Hill in this kind of a matchup. Pat Connaughton's done really well in some blowouts in the past. Again, not another one I'm excited about, but that's how little I think of the George Hill play, especially at the projected ownership he's at. Just makes no sense to me why he'd be that high owned. Moving over to like site specific, like I don't think there's gaps that are massive. But one guy I like tonight as a speculative play is, you're going to get all the other Clippers with a bunch of ownership. Let's play Luke Canard. That to me is a really interesting pivot. And again, Luke Canard is a guy who early in the day was showing up to be like 5% owned. And I'm like, I know that's not going to be the case. Now he's looking more like 15%. But Canard and Bledsoe, I mean, there's a lot of guards that they have, but so does Portland, by the way, because they play Powell, who I love also, by the way. I love Norman Powell. He's looking great lately. He looks like his old self. And I think he's got a really, really high upside, especially on where people won't play him as FanDuel. So I'm considering playing him on FanDuel, even at 6,100, because we know he has a ceiling. The steal block upside is tremendous, especially against the Clippers. But on DraftKings, he stands out as being like just a perfect play. But again, right now, I would treat your lineups as just who do we want to play in the first game. For me, those are mostly Holiday, Milton, Korkmaz, maybe Giannis. Everybody else I can take him or leave him at the moment. I do think Paul Reed's going to step into being a nice play. I would love to see the starting lineup before I decide and make my final decision. So you guys, I'll be in Discord once I do get out of here, and I can try and answer any questions you guys have in that. It's weird how even on a 3-game slate, you sort of have to wait for things because we need to know the starting lineup. It's a big deal. Paul Reed I'm afraid that sneaky Paul Reed play is going to turn into the chalk, which is going to make me try and find a way to fade Paul Reed. Hey, no problem, Sensei Jay. Appreciate you guys too. You guys have been great and awesome. These shows have been really helpful in both doing them, and hopefully they've been helpful for some of you guys. I know we've had some big winners, and hopefully we can get that going again tonight. It's always hard in the 3-game slates because you have to sort of take bad angles. It's like it's like playing a little bit showdown-ish. Anyway, it is too bad. I do want to announce that I did build two DraftKings lineups last night, and Freiermuth was my captain in one of them. And I ended up not playing on DraftKings at all because I couldn't edit. So I was like, okay, if I can't edit for an hour, I'm not going to risk it in case somebody's out before the game. So I canceled all my lineups. That could have been an interesting spot to maybe take it down, maybe have a shot at taking down a big tournament. All right, what else do we have here? Looks like the questions are drying up a little bit. I'm looking to see if I can get an updated projection. So far, it looks like their sites are like in the process of adjusting it. And as I expected, Paul Reed is now showing up as a much stronger play. And unfortunately, shout out to RG for their awesome projections. Unfortunately, Paul Reed is now the player who has the highest point per dollar, is the best point per dollar play on the slate. And also, for those of you who look at things like smash percentage and things like that, he also has the highest smash percentage on the slate. So my sneaky play is no longer sneaky, and really wasn't that sneaky to begin with, but it would have felt a little bit sneaky. He played 4 minutes last night. It hasn't put up 20 fantasy points in a game this season, but this is not a situation unlike any other that they've faced so far. So, damn it, Paul Reed, sneaky play out the window. Sucks to be me. Is Cappella worth a shot? I love that question, Carnes asked. Here's why. So I don't usually like – Capella's had some struggles on some back-to-backs in his past. He's also had some decent games against Gobert, and he's had some duds against Gobert. But I like Cappella tonight for a number of reasons. One, he only played 23 minutes on the front end of the back-to-back last night. Most players on his team can't say that. If DeAndre Hunter is out, and if Bogdanovich on top of it is out, while he doesn't soak up the usage from an offense standpoint, it's an extra assist, it's an extra touch, it's an extra rebound here and there that he's going to gather that they won't gather. Now, Reddish and Gallinari are, filling in. These are not like scrubs. Lou Williams is no scrub. So I don't know. To be honest with you, by the time that game comes around, I might have talked myself into a little bit of Lou Williams as a really, really interesting play if we do lose those guys. But to answer the question overall, yes, I think Capella's worth a shot. I don't think we've seen the best from him yet. Obviously, it's a tough matchup. It's not like he has to guard somebody one-on-one, though. His minutes have been kind of fluctuating, but I love that he only played 23 on the front end last night of the back-to-back because I think they're going to let him play a little bit, get his 30 minutes tonight, 30-plus minutes probably tonight, maybe as much as 33. That's probably the most we could ask for. But Cappella with 33 minutes in a game that's actually projected to play quickly. Again, I like the under in that game still, but I think Cappella is going to be, he's an interesting play. I'll put it that way. I love him because people aren't playing him. If people were playing him, I would probably say, hey, why the hell are we playing Clint Cappella here? But I think it's a really, really good sneaky play. All right, what else have we got here? I'm getting my projections updated, and we don't have a starting lineup still from Philly that I have seen. Let's see if that changes in the next few minutes before I get out of here. The projected one makes a lot of sense to me, but that includes Paul Reed in there, who was projected to start last night and then didn't end up playing but 4 minutes of the game. But this is a different matchup. You'd think they'd need to match somebody up. You could argue they'd start Niang. They tend to like him off the bench, but it also makes Niang a much better play with no Curry. Just the usage that Curry soaks up, the shooting, the shots taken, the fact that everybody I expect to be a little bit limited who played big minutes last night, which was pretty much the whole Sixers team. The guys like Milton, Niang, and Reed are the guys I would try to target, the guys who didn't play all those minutes last night. And if you see Jaden Springer or Aaron Henry in the starting lineup, I'm going to have to consider what I want to do there. It feels fishy, especially when we might get like two players for Atlanta, which would open up some other value between like guys like Reddish and Herter. As I mentioned, I was like Paul Reed, and these guys could start and not play hardly any minutes. But then again, what if it's a blowout? Jaden Springer or Aaron Henry could end up with like 35 fantasy points if they're down 30 points in the second half. These guys might play the rest of the game against the entire bottom of the bench for the Bucks. So that's just an interesting thing to consider. All right. I'm not loving these projections. I'm not trusting them. So it's kind of hard because I need to know if he's starting or not, especially with the Paul Reed situation. I would love it if Paul Reed does not start tonight. I think that it's a much stronger play in that case because you're going to get much lower ownership. No interest in Danny Green for me, even without this. I think that he'll project a little better and people will probably see, Danny Green and start him. Danny Green on a back-to-back straight off of an injury. I was waiting for Danny Green to be scratched today. And I think that had they had less people, he would have probably not, even if he played the back-to-back, I just don't expect him to, I expect him to be fairly limited. He hasn't, I don't believe he's played a back-to-back all year. Yeah, he hasn't played a back-to-back this season and has historically been very bad on back-to-backs. Jump shooters in general, try to stay away from if you can. You can't always do it, but on a 3-game slate, it's harder to do it, but I don't think you need to be messing with that. I really like the Shake Milton, really like the Korkmaz. I think Maxey is a strong play, but I think you use Maxey where you're going to be playing the Milwaukee guys like Giannis and Holiday or something like that, because I don't think Maxey on his own can get there if they get blown out. Can get us the 40 that we need from them if they get blown out. I just don't think it's possible. I mean, it would mean he'd be like the only person scoring, basically. And I'm still on the fade Drummond train, even though now it's a little harder to argue for it, because I think that actually Drummond, if I think they were going to win this game or this game was going to be close, Drummond would be the guy who I would think would take over along with Maxey, the starting offensive initiation, type of guys. Then you got Milton off the bench who can also take that role. But so that's tricky. Other guys we haven't talked about. I don't know where I stand on Donovan Mitchell. I mean, if we had a ton more value, I really love Donovan Mitchell because he could shoot 8 for 24 and score 40 fantasy points. I mean, if he makes shots like he did the game before, 14 for 20, then you have 50 fantasy points. I don't know. I'm not finding myself with the Utah guys too much tonight. They're full. They're healthy. There's my favorite play on their team, I think, is Royce O'Neal. Just super consistent. I mentioned that the play about Canard and that being somewhat speculative. Well, so is Royce O'Neal seemingly, except for you realize he's pretty damn consistent. Every now and then he'll have a bad, a dud game, but mostly he's in that 19 to 36 range. He's been at 36 and 32 in his last 2 games. I think that's a really interesting play. I'll cover the Portland game real quick, and then we'll come back to the original. Damien Lillard, by the way, here's a question for you. As badly as Russell Westbrook's played this year, do you know who has a lower field goal percentage from 3-point range than he does? Damien Lillard, shooting 25% from 3-point range. And that's with some good performances. He also has an 0 for 9, an 0 for 8, and an 0 for 6 from three games on his resume this year. So I don't love the ownership that he's getting. It's making me kind of want to stay away from it. On FanDuel, it's a little harder to stay away from it on this slate. But my counter would be to play the Nurkic-McCollum combination with Powell and get a little game stack going with the Clippers. Like I said, I like Batum considering the ownership and everything else. So I would go with Batum slightly ahead of Man, but Canard as my longer shot play, or Bledsoe, like 3 of these guys, and 2 of those guys with either Reggie Jackson or Paul George. And then in that case, you'd have to fade some of the first game, which will give you some, at least chances to be different in the field. Christian, I have no idea about anything about that. I used to be the biggest college basketball nut. It made me a lot of money. I don't watch 1 second of college basketball until I'm scouting players to see who's going to be drafted where, just because I love it. So I don't particularly care if Michigan State. I hope they win. I hope they cover the 5 for you. But for me, doesn't affect me any. Sheets is at the game. We'll be at the games. That'll be fun. That's why we only have 3 games tonight, is just because of the start of the college basketball season with the nice little double header in Madison Square Garden. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do still, and that's unfortunately I'm going to have to get out of here pretty soon. I think we really need the Sixers lineup at some point, and that would help. But beware, one of these Springer or Henry guys could end up being an interesting value play. Again, you might be losing a little leverage for who might play later, but all of these minutes, the Danny Green 28 could be 22. The Andre Drummond projection for 34 minutes could easily be 26. The Tyrese Maxey for 35 could be 28. Shake Milton now up to 30 projected minutes. Oh, Shake Milton is just exploding now, projections. Isn't that frustrating? Isn't that frustrating when you have a play that you love and then somebody gets ruled out and then now everybody's on the play and you have to decide whether or not now you want to try and fade the guy you love? Sucks. Okay. So we can't really do much more until we get a starting lineup from Philly or Milwaukee. I'm going to get out of here and let you guys throw out what you want to throw out. I'll give you a couple minutes. I'll give you like 1 minute before I can start answering more questions. Clarkson, interesting long shot tournament play, kind of works with the potential blowout in that game. I mean, Atlanta's still not a bad team. And if you were going to get no ownership on Clarkson, I would like it. I feel like this is like a play that should be like a 4%er. Clarkson has yet to have a game we would have wanted from him that when Donovan Mitchell played this season. So that's my only issue with it. When everybody's healthy, it's hard for Clarkson to get there at his price, and they have to keep his price up a little bit because when they're not there, they can't just make him 1,000,000% owned. I prefer Royce O'Neal to Clarkson today. And he's cheaper. Even in raw points, I think that Clarkson probably usually eclipses him here, but I think it's close. What's up, Miami Mike? Any other questions before we get out of here? Again, going to give you guys 1 minute to do it. I do think Clarkson is viable. I just don't think that it's not what I'm looking to do. I prefer the Clippers guys a little bit ahead of him. They have much more minute security. Sheets, all right, let's go. It looks like he's posting the pictures in the Discord of being at the game. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Coach K's last game in New York, so we'll see how that goes. And they've got a new kid, a foreign kid, who's really awesome from what I hear. So I may poke my head in and take a look at that game if my NBA lineups are dudding tonight. All right, doesn't look like there's any more questions, guys. We appreciate you. We love you. We want you to win all the money tonight. If any money that I don't win, I hope you guys take as much of the rest of it as possible. And if I don't win, I hope that all you guys do. So let's make some money, fellas. Good luck to everyone, and crush it. Let's get it.